Hello everyone and welcome to Game Club. Today, Heads of State, the game where you basically play as heads of state in Europe. In front of us is the Heads of State board set up and ready to go. There's a few things that you have to note, which I'll probably quickly run through just to show you. So the first thing is obviously the setup itself. You've got on your left hand side here at the very top, you've got your basically your revolution card, which is at the very top, which is you choose 11 cards, take the revolution card out, shuffle it into those, and then put them on a pile at the top with a black disc on it, which is known as a revolution disc. And that allows you then to effectively, you'll find out what that kind of comes in at the end. Below that's the attribute cards, which you shuffle, and then you basically draw 6 of them and place them here. And then below that is the treachery cards, and you shuffle those and you place 2 below that. Then on the right hand side you place all of your effectively your quote unquote heads of states. These are your titled people, so they go from Baron, Count, Earl, Marquis, Duke, Prince, and then of course King, which is right at the bottom there. You can't see those, but I'll keep them off the wall, but trust me, they're there. And then what you do is you set up all of the tokens, and you should get in the box a whole group of separate types, like the circles, hexagons, and then I think cubes as well, and they all match onto a board here, and they're scoring tiles for when you play characters onto that. The other thing to note as well is you will get a card which will denote how you create certain characters. So for instance, a Baron, a Count, an Earl, a Marquis, Duke, Prince, and King, etc. And it outlines what cards you need, what attribute cards you need in order to lay them on the board. And obviously you will get your little, and I'll just show you from the red, you'll get this set up here, which will have your red titled heads of states, etc. on. And just at the top here also you've got your round, and there's 3 rounds, so that's your round marker, and then just over here are your scoring or victory point markers as well as you move around the board. Now what effectively happens is that you get your first round where you're only allowed to draw attribute cards, and that is the first, if you say for instance playing like we are a 3-player game, then the first player takes 1, second 2, and third will take 3. 4 players, the first and second take 1 each, the third takes 2, and the fourth takes 3, and 5 players, the first 2 take 1, second 2 take 2, and the third and the final player, 5th player, takes 3. And there is obviously 2-player variation as well. Then just to note as well that what effectively you do after that is you can choose to take an attribute card. You can take up to 3 of those, and then just here, or you can take a treachery card and effectively then use that treachery card. You can also decide to flush the cards, and effectively you'll dump these 6, work them back into the attribute deck, unless of course it's all, you'd have to get into the 11 there from the revolution deck, then you ignore that, and effectively then you redraw 6 cards. That can be both a blessing and a curse, and I recommend strongly thinking about that before you actually do it. What you're effectively doing is you're getting like this is very well set up, so you've got title, troops, and castle there. If you've got those 3 cards, you effectively then be able to place an Earl somewhere. So you would use those cards to place an Earl somewhere on the board where you can. So an Earl's picture looks like that, and so you could place an Earl, say here in France, or here in Spain, or up here in Britain, but that's effectively near Scotland, etc., etc. And then you play that card, and what happens is you score VPs for that your Earl being there, and that's obviously denoted by each turn. But just to note, people can use treachery cards to remove you, and they can either do that via an assassin or a country specific card, like for instance, good example, Spain and Spanish Inquisition, Britain, and they have basically it's an axeman, and effectively I think that what that's saying is the revenge of, let's say, the nobles because you've been naughty or what have you. What effectively happens is at the end of rounds you will take tiles. So say for instance you have the end of 1589, you have the most players here, you take the 6, and then the least will be 5, and that's in the green German states, France, blue states, and depending on where they are, and then Spain, etc. And you score like that until obviously the game is over. What happens is that just to note that the game ends when the revolution card appears in the 1789 turn. So once 1789 comes along and effectively the revolution card is played, then the game ends. You score each turn. So what happens is that you will do round by round, and what effectively happens, you will get the person with the most of a particular, say, baron or count or whatever, gets certain points at the end of the game. End of turn is scored France, Britain, Spain, and then the German states. So in that order. So that's how you do it. You do France, Britain, Spain, and then the German states, scoring that way, not the other way, and you get bonus points for that. And just to tell you about when a round ends, because that's quite important as well. What happens is that, so as you go through the game, once you lay down some players, you will so you're scoring when the first noble is created in each area, and then effectively you will move up. When a player has created a noble in every area, when a player has one noble of each type, they effectively get a noble house, and the end of each turn, all four countries are scored. So that is effectively it. So I came to Heads of State with a real feeling that I would detest this game. I liked the idea, but I hated the artwork, I hated the box work, I hated this terrible sort of photoshopped imagery. I just think it made the game look cheap. It made the game look, to be perfectly fair, just completely absent of any sort of merit. Yeah, that's probably because I'm being slightly facetious, but the fact is that the game is a lot better than the terrible box work sort of gives it credit, because it's a lot more cut and thrust than you'd expect. There's a lot more manipulation at play, and there's a lot more, people have called it luck, this card drawing luck. It's not, there's a lot of strategy involved, because holding on to cards, deciding if you want to lay nobles in certain areas, or if you want to use treachery to try and sort of take people out, and sometimes playing a bit tit for tat, supporting with people, especially if you play 4 or 5 players, where that becomes a real paradigm, is we're working together to sort of hold regions, especially, to be blunt, France, Spain, very big regions, the ones which you really try to push. And the revolution card can pop up at any time, and that stings you as well, because I appreciate that, all of the 1589, 1689, 1789 are all sort of tail-ended by this, and yeah, you have to go through the attribute deck. But the problem is, when you get to those 11 cards, it suddenly becomes a case of, do I pull all my 3 cards, and what happens if that revolution card comes up? Because you could be in a really good position, but you could also be completely faltering as well. So there is a lot involved in that. Overall, Heads of State really needs to redesign this box. Please get rid of it. If you're going to release this again, get rid of this, because the game is very good. It does need a few tweaks. I think that the sort of lots of additional cubes and sort of wooden blocks on the board is too much. that needs to be really got rid of. But bar that, it's a very good game and well worth playing. So that's Heads of State. I'm Simon, and this is Game Club, and thank you for watching.